Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
Conrad.
Yes, sir.
You know I don't have a whole lot of free time these days, right?
I've heard about that.
Yeah. Well, based on your recommendation,
right?
I watched that old Tekashi 6ix9ine thing.
Yeah, the supervillain documentary on Showtime.
That's time out of my life I will never get back.
Can you believe that actually was a thing? I have to admit, I was not all the way in the loop on Tekashi 6ix9ine and the spectacle that he made of himself and the whole story. I mean, I knew that he was a quote unquote rat, and I knew he was like a weird rapper, social media guy, but I didn't know just how crazy his story was. So you said, hey man, didn't you see a documentary that you thought would be pretty crazy? What was that again? And I shared it, but I can't believe you actually watched it.
Neither can I. Neither can I. You know, and as I sit here and I not reminisce, but I kind of just ponder on life's little questions and what have you, and Steven Tyler lyrics kind of run through my head just in general on a daily basis. Anyhow, you realize this is going to drop on April 2nd, correct?
What we're talking about right now? Yeah. Wrestlemania 12, our Something to Wrestle. Yes. Yeah.
So then when this drops on April 3rd, I will have been married for 25 years.
Really? Well, congratulations.
Yeah. 25 years. And it makes me think of a time that when Vince was celebrating maybe his 35th wedding anniversary, or maybe 25. I don't fucking know. It was whatever it was. He said, Jerry, could you imagine being married to the same person for 25 or 30 years or whatever it was? And Jerry says, Vince, I couldn't imagine dating someone that was 25 or 30 years old, that old. So as I say all that, he couldn't imagine dating someone that old.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That's a real Jerry Lawler joke. That's a Jerry Lawler line. That's a true actual statement from Jerry. I'm not busting on Jerry. I love Jerry. Me and Jerry be good. I find Jerry highly entertaining. But as I do when I'm sitting there today, you saw me, man. I was really not clean shaven. I basically grown myself a beard, and I said to myself, Self, I'm going to shave this motherfucker off today. I'm going to shave, and I'm going to just shave clean and all that good shit.
Wait, are you getting armpits and chest and sack meat and the whole deal?
No, it's just my facial area.
Okay, got it.
Now, see, you won't be able to relate to this because you don't shave.
Well, I mean, I do above and below the beard, but yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, well then come with me on this little journey for a second.
I'm ready.
You're shaving above and below. You probably keep your shave cream and your razor in the same area, correct?
Dr. Carver's shave butter, slicker than something on a gold tooth, according to Jim Cornette.
That's exactly what I use as well.
There you go.
But you probably keep your shave butter and your razor right next to each other in the same place, same time, all the time?
All the time.
All the time. Well, imagine the goddamn shock of going in and I'm ready to shave. Now, I haven't shaved in like 2 weeks or whatever it was.
Right.
But there's my shave butter up there, and I go to find my razor. I can't find my goddamn razor. Because someone had arbitrarily gone into my goddamn shelves and moved my goddamn razor.
Why are you cussing Stephanie like this?
Didn't cuss Stephanie. I said someone.
Okay.
But damn it, Stephanie had gone into my shelves and moved my razor for some reason. And I couldn't find it, and then I found it, but it just, and like I've got the clippers too, so like when you want to like clean up your goatee and shit and everything, and just, those two. So I have a little bag for that, and I keep it all in the bag. It's a peanut little thing, right?
Right.
And on top of that was shoved another clippers that I think, anyway, and I just had to ask, why? Why did you have to take this other clippers and put it in my clipper bag that I use and with some wires and other shit and put it up back in there? And why did you have to move my razor? And there's no reason. And then she says to me, well, the cleaning people were coming and I didn't want them to touch it. I said, but there was nowhere, they don't touch my shelves. Just why, Conrad? Why? Why does these things have to set me off and just be able to put me into a place that is just goddamn unfair?
You know what's interesting about that too is the statement you were given was, I didn't want the cleaning people to move your stuff, so I did.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that the same thing? Like, I'm trying to avoid this happening. So to make sure it didn't happen, I did it.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, it's like, my grandfather told me once, he was married to my grandmother.
What did Grandpa Thompson tell you?
It was Big Daddy Jones.
Oh, it's Big Daddy Jones on the other side. Okay.
Not the other side of the pond, who will never get in the Hall of Fame. A different Big Daddy, the Jones one here in Alabama. He divorced my grandmother after many, many years of marriage. And I asked why that was. Like, how are you married all these years, decades, and then you get divorced? And he said, son, I came to realize one day that, if I'd have just shot her instead of getting married, I'd have been a free man by now. But yeah, here I am, still in this same hell pattern. Don't ever get married. And of course I listened real good. So 3 years ago I got married, and that has not been my experience, but it sounds like from the way you're describing things are going to change in my life one day.
Yeah. Things are going to change in your life one day, but look, that doesn't outweigh the wonderful 25 years that I have had being married to the same woman and the mother of my children, whom I love absolutely dearly and all that good shit. But God bless America. So, leave my fucking razor on the goddamn razor shelf.
So this is where we are. You got razor heat.
Yeah.
Let me just ask though.
I got razor heat. I got Takahashi, Yoshi, Gizabudu, and fucking Tokyo Dome heat. Could you imagine if that motherfucker ever worked the Tokyo Dome?
I don't know how we got to this place, so I'll just
Takahashi
6ix9ine.
Yeah, him. Yeah. Did he ever work Tokyo Dome?
I don't know, but he was probably over there. He was over everywhere else. It's pretty.
You see, that's a scary state.
That's what I'm saying.
Society.
It's hard to imagine that was a thing. I was shocked that this was a thing, and it was like not something I was aware of. So I'm glad you actually. Hey, I am curious. Is this like what our show is now? I mean, I was hoping we'd talk about WrestleMania 12, but I feel like you just went on like an old man yells at clouds rant about a shave kit.
Well, Conrad, they got everything up in the cloud. If you don't yell at the cloud, then who the hell is going to hear you? That's
actually the most sound reason I've ever heard for being the guy who yells at the clouds in the sky. That everything's in the cloud these days.
It is. It's all up in the cloud. Where's Jake? I lost these pictures. No, they're up in the cloud. Well, I really would like to see that. It's up in the cloud. What happened to my fucking razor? It's up in the cloud. Everything's in the goddamn cloud. So if you don't yell at the cloud, how the fuck is the cloud going to know that you're pissed off?
That's
See, you just looked up to the clouds. Just then, you looked up to the fucking clouds because you know that that's true.
You ready to talk about WrestleMania?
Correct me if I'm wrong.
I agree with everything you're saying, Bruce. I don't think you and I have ever had a disagreement on these shows. By the way,
good point.
What was the feedback you got from last week's show where we were sort of all over the place doing a little rapid fire Q&A? I got some pretty good feedback. I think the two things that people enjoyed the most, I've already had multiple requests for. Hey, you guys need to animate the story, the what if of Vince McMahon on The Price is Right. That seems like that could be fun. And they really liked the pickle story from last week. The way you really stretched it, told the whole car rental story, and pickles were everywhere. That could be fun.
It wasn't stretching it. That was how it all happened.
I'm not arguing.
In the awkward ride with a complete stranger who I had just paid him in cash half of his rental car fee just to get to the Conrad that has its own chauffeur service.
Oh,
you could have just called, one of your chauffeurs, Clint from Hershey or something, could have come and got me.
Clint doesn't have a driver's license.
I guess he don't drive at night on Mondays.
Clint doesn't have a driver's license. Clint's a ride catcher. He's a ride share guy.
Oh yeah.
That's becoming a thing with the kids these days. Like both Megan and I's kids, when they turned 16, neither one were like racing to go get their license. They're both like, nah, we're good, which is kind of weird.
And that bothered me.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Well, what do you attribute that to?
Complacency. I don't get it. I wanted to get my license on my 16th birthday so I could fly and be free. Fly, be free. That's from Mark and Mindy when Mark discovered all the eggs and eggs up in the air. Fly, be free. Chestnut. Okay. Some of our older fans will get that.
Yeah.
You have no idea what I'm talking about.
No, but John Paul Shellnut does. He's your age, so he knows.
He's older. Shit. He's like 709.
Well, let's talk about WrestleMania 12, the Arrowhead Pond, Anaheim, California.
You still didn't send me notes, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead. We're winging it.
No, I shared them on Google Docs.
I got high-speed business internet. I didn't get the shit yet.
I mean, I'm looking at your name on the list. I sent it to your AIM.
Yeah, AIM.
I mean, does it fucking matter? It's not like you're going to read them now. We're doing the show.
Okay. I mean, it's not like I read them before. It's just that I want to be included.
Okay. All right.
Does the very last two lines of this show are Bruce Pritchard?
They are. That's true. But you know, what's fun is I've gotten used to doing the show without Bruce Pritchard.
Yeah, but it's not damn near as entertaining.
I'm not arguing that at all. Fuck, I'm over here trying to hold it together.
Because it's my old one. I used to be funny.
Yeah, back when you had, not a solid set of gray hair. Are we going to talk about that? We need to get you a Just for Men membership. You're getting older by the day.
What's wrong with gray hair?
Nothing. Megan actually likes it.
If you let your shit go, it'll all be gray too.
I don't dye shit.
Bullshit.
Buddy. You think, when you look at me, you think, boy, that guy, he's pretty vain. You can tell.
I know. Yeah, I do.
I'm just saying, how are you like Mr. Manicure Pedicure? You can't fucking rake a little Just for Men across there. But
okay, the Just for Men shit, because you got to like shampoo that shit in and let it sit, and then it makes your hair smell funny. And I don't know, I don't like it. And the lady that used to color my hair, I obviously don't go to her anymore. And it just was so tight. Would be so tight. They put the foil and shit on your hair, and you got to sit there under a thing and dry it and all that crap.
Oh, you know what? You and Charles Robinson need to go together, because he posts pictures of him in the foil. I didn't know that was from dyeing.
Yeah.
I don't know what people put foil in their hair for. I thought it was just girl shit. I didn't know.
No, it's professional shit. That's what you do when you professionally care about what you look like. Then you reach my age and you just don't care what you look like.
Yeah. So WrestleMania.
Except when you want to shave.
Yeah. And then you just get, it's another excuse to be irritated at your wife. Hey, so what'd you and Stephanie do for your big 2-5?
We haven't yet because it's tomorrow, Conrad.
So, okay. You're going to be at, a TV tomorrow. So
No, actually I'll be back tomorrow. April 3rd. I'll be home.
oh yeah. I forget we're talking about when it airs. My apologies. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. WrestleMania 12.
That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to be topical.
Can I talk about WrestleMania 12?
In the future, topical.
Please.
Oh, now you want to go to the Wayback Machine.
Yes. I'll save you a seat.
Okay.
You can ride shotgun.
All right, let's go.
Arrowhead Pond, Anaheim, California. Let's sort of walk it back a little bit. You know, WrestleMania 3, we all know, huge show. And it's in the Silver Dome. WrestleMania 4 and 5, Trump Plaza. WrestleMania 6, the Sky Dome in Toronto. 7 was supposed to be the Coliseum. Plans change. 8 in a dome in Indianapolis. 9 outdoors in Las Vegas. 10 Madison Square Garden. 11, it felt like the company knew, hey man, we're not where we used to be, so let's control our costs a little bit. You do it in Hartford, Connecticut. And now we're in Anaheim, California, not Los Angeles, but Anaheim. Is this just strictly based on you get more favorable terms in Anaheim than you might LA?
No, I'd say LA and Anaheim are probably the same. I think that more than anything, there was a move there at one point to go to fill up smaller buildings at maybe a higher price point.
Right.
And you make just as much as you would in a stadium. I think that the stadium aesthetics are better sometimes, but the feel for the performer and the look overall and just the overall cost in general of putting together an arena show versus a stadium show are considerable.
As we covered last week, and the whole Ask Bruce Anything, we sort of teased that this was around your wedding time. How complicated was this WrestleMania from your perspective, where you're trying to sort of wear two hats? It's the most stressful time of the year for your professional life, but somehow, you silly son of a bitch, you've managed to schedule a wedding right after. How's that even possible, dude?
Okay, well, kind of like everything else in my life, I arranged the things outside of the business around the business. So I knew I was going to get married.
Right.
And WrestleMania was coming up. And it was a time, and I knew that for our, what's that thing called? After you get married? Our honeymoon. Our honeymoon, I wanted to go to Hong Kong.
Wait a minute. That's where you go on a honeymoon? Did she have any say in this?
I don't recommend it for a honeymoon. But that was, in my head, I wanted to go to the exotic Hong Kong. I loved Hong Kong.
Wait, so you had been to Hong Kong before?
Yes, several times.
And so when you went to Hong Kong before, did you go on like a guy's trip or?
My brother lived over there, so I would go visit. And
not Dr. Tom, another brother.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's just a beautiful, beautiful island, beautiful place. And I used to say that it was a sophisticated New York City where more people spoke English.
Okay.
I love Asia. I love Japan. I love Hong Kong. So that's where I wanted to go. And Stephanie had never been, so she was kind of intrigued. I know now she'll never ever want to go back.
Oh, so she didn't enjoy her honeymoon.
She did, but I don't think it's, one of those places that's on the bucket list ever again. I think she would have much preferred a beach in Hawaii. But the thing was we're going to be on the West Coast, so it's a much shorter flight to Hong Kong. I dreaded the flight back, but it was time that I could take it right after WrestleMania. So I also knew that we didn't want a big wedding. We were just gonna do I do, she do, we do in Vegas. Those that wanted to come on, and those that didn't, hey, give me some money or a gift or something.
Give me some money. I love you for that. So you got married in the, which wedding chapel was it in Vegas? Because it's a pretty famous one, right? The
Little White Chapel in Vegas by the owner.
So is that the one that Michael Jordan got married in?
It is the one Jim Ross got married in, the one that Stephanie and Hunter got married in the infamous Monday Night Raw skit. And so the thing was I thought, okay, well, we can go to Anaheim. do WrestleMania. And then right after WrestleMania, we jump on a plane that Wednesday. I'll get married on Wednesday night, and everybody can go on their way of those that want to come from the office or from the wrestling crew. So it was, it was a lot of fun. And we finished up TV. Let me think how we did this. Yeah, we finished up TV in San Diego on Tuesday night. On Wednesday morning, Vince, Pat, and I flew to Vegas and stayed at Caesars and got married that night, had a big party, and went on our way.
How good of a salesman did you used to be, where you not only got your wife to schedule her wedding around WrestleMania, you made sure it was in Las Vegas so it was convenient for all the bizoids, and then you sold her on going to a guy's trip.
Yeah.
For a honeymoon.
Yeah. And while standing in line and in Caesars waiting to check in, Vince looks at me and says, "So what are we doing after the wedding?" And again, typical Bruce or typical whatever. I'm like, I don't know. Come back here to the bar and hang out, see what everybody wants to do. And he says, "You mind if I do something?" I said, "Yeah, you can do whatever you want." Not really even kind of putting two and two together.
Wait, so you didn't have a reception planned?
No.
Okay.
I figured we just all come back to the bar and hang out.
Okay.
And so he grabs Tom at the wedding. Tom was my best man, and tells me, he goes, "Let everybody know that afterwards, I've got a room at the Palm, and we'll have a nice little get together at the Palm." So there were 22 people that were at the wedding. Gorilla Monsoon, Howard Finkel, from the biz, if you will. Tom was there, and my mom was there, and friends from school, Buddy Sullivan and his wife Beverly. They came.
Did Stephanie get to invite anyone, or was that not allowed? Yeah.
Sudrosa came.
Okay.
That was her maid of honor, but it was just a fun time. Cornette was there.
How about that?
It was a fun time.
Well, the good old days.
Yeah. So it was good. And then we had, a big party and shit. My mom this is great. So my mom leaves the dinner, and Vince has this big room and shit. Everybody gets to order whatever they want. He had like a plethora of appetizers and different shit that was just everything on the menu type deal. And then people got to order whatever they wanted entree wise and eat, drink, be merry. Had a big cake made for us and shit. It was beautiful. And it was really, really, really cool, really nice. But my mom comes up and she wants to leave early. And so she comes up to us, and she was there with a friend of hers, and she says, "Oh, Nancy and I are so tired. I'm going to go back to bed early because we're really tired." And my mom leaves. So now we finish up the festivities over there, and we're walking back over to Caesars Casino. We're going to go to a bar over there, and as we're walking through the casino, there's my mom on the slots. Oh. Looking at our bandage and shit. You whore. And she said, "Oh, well, we came. Oh, my God, look at the time." Bullshit. She just wanted to go gamble.
I love that.
So, yeah, it was for the convenience of everybody. When we got there, so when we got to Anaheim, one of the other things that we got to do was we arranged for a bunch of the boys to go on a Universal Studios tour.
Okay. So
it was Layfield and his wife at the time, Bubba Ray. I think Devon was with us.
No. This is 96. This is before they're there.
Oh, shit. No, Bradshaw was there.
Yeah, but Bubba Ray and Devon were still in ECW. They didn't come around for years. You're thinking of a different trip.
I must be thinking of a different trip. Well, then, never mind.
No, go ahead. Tell us about another time.
No, the Universal Studios tour, and I know Bubba was there because of the hat I had. But we went through, and Leave It to Beaver is one of my favorite all-time favorite television shows. I tape it to this day on MeTV every morning from 8 to 9, and I watch it. That's like my if I'm in a bad place, I just go watch Leave It to Beaver because it makes me happy. It makes me smile.
Good for you.
Right. And so we went on the backlot tour of Universal Studios, and I got to see Leave It to Beaver's house.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Leave It to Beaver was a warlock in real life.
It's funny because you actually have mentioned that to me before, but there's more to that story when you told me that I don't think you'll tell on the show.
But then again, that's past history. I found it interesting because I watched a Leave It to Beaver episode the other day where Beaver was afraid of witches.
Yeah, and in real life, he's not afraid of witches.
I know in real life that he became a warlock, a super warlock, like with mega powers and shit.
Mega powers. Well, let's explode them here for WrestleMania.
Let's go. God bless it, America.
March 31st, 1996 is when it went down. So we just passed the 25th anniversary. We've got 15,855 fans there. 12,909 of those were paying fans. They had a gross at the gate of $737,440, and it did 290,000 buys. That's down 50,000 from the year prior with Lawrence Taylor on top. In hindsight, do you think Lawrence Taylor was responsible for those extra 50,000 buys, or was the business down, or did we just not have what the people wanted to see?
Probably a combination of all of those things. And that new gas station and opening up down the street.
The other thing I found interesting is WrestleMania 11 cost $34.95 on pay-per-view, where WrestleMania 12 cost $29.95. When I sort of freestyled a question like this last week on the Q&A, he said, nah, man, we didn't have studies back then. It was just feel. Did you feel like the year prior, perhaps because of your financial commitment to Lawrence Taylor, you needed to charge the $5 extra? Did you feel like because he was on the card, it was enough added value that you could? Did you think the business maybe wouldn't sustain it here? Did you think that maybe you only got $340 the year prior because of that extra $5? What's the thinking for the decrease?
I think just kind of with the market and overall looking at where we were and where pay-per-view was at the time. Pay-per-view has gone through some highs and lows in its history as well. And I think it just was different. And by the way, I found the notes. They went to my junk thing. You go to my junk thing.
Why did you junk me?
What the hell's up with that?
Why'd you junk me?
I didn't junk you, but you went to my junk thing.
Well, that's not cool, man.
It is. It's fucked up.
Hey, I want to mention.
I'm still not going to look at them, but I found them.
I know you're not going to watch them, buddy. It does make me wonder, like maybe the pay-per-view landscape changed. Maybe I'm reaching here, but Tyson goes to prison. He's not on pay-per-view in 92, 93 or 94. He comes back in August of 95. So that's after you've done WrestleMania 11, but now, he's going to fight Frank Bruno on March 16th. So just 10 days before this, Mike Tyson's on pay-per-view again. And even here, even though it's maybe not the Mike Tyson of several years prior, he's still a juggernaut on pay-per-view. When you're going to run a show in the same month as a Mike Tyson pay-per-view back then, that has to at least be something you're aware of, right?
Oh, certainly. You're aware of as much as you can be on that, in that realm, because I think you're fighting for the same entertainment dollar there. The same buyer that's going to buy us is going to buy a Tyson fight.
Right. Let's talk about the road to WrestleMania. It began at the Royal Rumble, which we recently covered. Diesel cost the Undertaker his title match against Bret Hart. Shawn Michaels wins the Royal Rumble, nearly strips naked. And Goldust wins the Intercontinental title from Razor Ramon. Vader makes his WWF debut. Vader and Gorilla had their classic angle the next night on Monday Night Raw, where Vader would attack Gorilla, put him on the shelf. And this is really all done because Vader came over hurting and he needed surgery. So we had to have a reason to suspend him. In hindsight, how well do you think that Vader Gorilla angle was done?
I thought it was done very well. It was a big deal. It was the equivalent of attacking Jack Tunney. However, the audience genuinely loved Gorilla Monsoon.
Yes, they did.
So I think that was a huge deal in a huge way to debut Vader. Let's
sort of fill the gaps between the Rumble and Mania here. Roddy Piper is going to be announced as replacing Gorilla Monsoon as the president. And I like the idea of having him in this role. He's a beloved figure, much like Gorilla. When you first bring him in, do you bring him in with the understanding that, hey, Scott Hall's not happy with the Goldust thing and we need to call an audible? Or were those two unrelated and it just happened that way where it's like, okay, what else could we do? Hey, Roddy's back now doing this other thing. Let's just tie it together.
It was a combination of the two, and it was more of a, hey, Roddy, you want to come back? You want to be back in the fold? And it also was one of those where, yeah, we needed somebody to fill that razor spot. And if you're going to do it, you've got to do it with a bigger name and a better name. Roddy Piper fit that role. It was a combination of, okay, well, we've got him for that. We could use him for this interim president deal, but to get Roddy back in the mix without having to do everything central on the Goldust story. That makes any sense at all.
Let's talk about, Roddy and how easy it was to get him to get back into the ring with some physicality.
I just was laughing at how easy it was. Nothing with Roddy was easy.
Well, that was my question. Cause it does feel like, hey, we pitch him one deal and then once he's back in the fold, then we try to pitch a little more, much like maybe you're pitched as being a consultant working from home, part-time, few hours a week. And then you're pacing concrete floors 4 days a week in hell before you know it. Does any of that ring a bell?
I mean, I could relate to that analogy, I guess. You know,
I just remember a few years ago, oh yeah, it's going to be like 4 hours a week from home. It's great. It's no big deal. Fast forward 2 months. Hey man, do you know how hard concrete floors are in dress shoes for 17 hours a day? I forgot. So chat me up, talking Roddy out of this figurehead role. And now we're going to do some physicality. I'm sure he was game to do stuff with Dustin. I'm sure that's something he could have fun with. He always liked to be a guy to push the envelope, but just, hey, we signed up for one thing. Now we want you to do another. What was that like?
You know, it wasn't necessarily that way. It was like, hey, Roddy, we'd like to have you come back. We'd like to use you in some different things. And then it grew from there. I know that Roddy, first of all, Roddy thought everything was a swerve and that everything was out to get him in a lot of respects. But he also knew that, I didn't blow smoke up his ass and I didn't try to, hey, Roddy, we're going to have you do this. I told him pretty much up front that this is the deal. We're probably going to do more. And he knew it was coming. He knew there was going to be more. He knows that, not to use him would have been a bad thing in more things.
Would you, would this have been something where you're involved with the money conversation at all when you're having that conversation? Or do you always defer to Vince or someone else in that era?
In that era, it was, there were no guaranteed contracts. There was no guarantee like that. So we were just really testing the waters at that point. And for Roddy was old school and understood that, hey, he's going to get a WrestleMania payoff in here and that he would be paid accordingly for what he contributed.
Let's talk about some other news and notes as we head in here. Mankind is a character we start to see vignettes for. And you've told us before that, the rat that was featured in some of those vignettes is Jim Cornette's pet rat, George the Rat. And of course we know that Mankind is going to debut right after WrestleMania on that Monday Night Raw. There's so many fascinating things about that character. Jim Ross, of course, takes credit or blame for pushing for the signing. And, he jokingly says that Vince McMahon demanded that if we're going to hire Mick Foley, that Cactus Jack guy, we've got to cover his face up. So he gets a crazy mask and a crazy outfit and there's patches of hair missing and he's rocking back and forth and making funny sounds. And he has one set of music for an entrance and one set for an exit. There's just a lot going on with this character, a lot of thought put into it. What can you tell us about these original vignettes and how this whole character came to life before he ever had a match on TV?
Well, I mean, what's the question? Is it
Who's helping develop that and pitch in ideas? And I mean, you were very involved in the whole Kane process. We know that, but was there someone who could say, man, Mankind was my character. I really doubled down and spent a lot of time and invested a lot of energy in that.
It was so much a combination of, I would say during that time, probably, Corny, myself, and Vince. And, Vince had a specific vision as to what he saw. And I think Corny and I had a vision as far as how we saw and knew Cactus and what could and couldn't work. So it was definitely a team effort on that.
We also know that Phineas Godwin is going to debut. Who brought Dennis Knight in? Tell us how that came to be.
Dennis was one of those guys, Tex Slazenger, that was always around and beloved by everyone. He had been in Florida, and I think he had worked WCW as well for some gigs and shit. But Tex was one of those guys that was always around and beloved by everyone. So whenever anything would come up, it would always be, hey, what about Tex? This was one of those, as you're looking around going, hey, Tex is looking for a job. What about using something here? And Phineas Godwin was born.
Who comes up with PIG and HOG? Phineas Godwin and then Henry O. Godwin. So they're PIG and HOG. Whose silly shit is this?
It's their names.
Yeah, but is that a Vince McMahon thing?
That was probably a combination thing.
Let's talk about the Billionaire Ted skits, because they start to air around that same time here in the first quarter of 96. How involved were you with those? Was Vince there for the filming of it? Did he just review the tape? This feels like something that would have just tickled him.
No, I wasn't there. I was only there for the Billionaire Ted and Huckster match. It is the only one that I had to be involved in. And the rest of those were a product of Chris Chambers and David Saadi that really masterminded those and came up with them and shot them from a guy that they had at a party that did impersonations, and one of them was Ted Turner. So it was born out of that, out of a guy that they had met and used for some different things, and thought, this guy does a pretty funny Ted Turner. Well, by God, Billionaire Ted was born.
It came out a few months ago. I shouldn't say it came out. I was watching an old Raw on the WWE Network, which is now on Peacock. And I hear, Bruce, that you can sign up for just like $2.50 right now. Is that real?
That is real.
That's like the best value in the history of wrestling, I think. $2.
Yeah, pretty much, man. I'd grab it if I were you.
Yeah. Check it out, by the way. It's on Peacock. So anyway, though, there was something that ran at the end of a Monday Night Raw where Vince introduced an ad that he tried to run in the newspaper, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, their financial section, and they both rejected it. So he was going to run a variation of that ad, but it was about, attention shareholders. Ted Turner has lost like $30 million of your money. Where'd that money go? How aggressive was Vince in real life? Not just on screen with the silly, funny, Billionaire Ted, but how aggressive was Vince behind the scenes in real life about battling for his company, attacking this Billionaire Ted Turner?
Well, I think that any time that you challenge Vince and being the competitor that he is and just the human being that he is, he's going to fight you. He's going to do everything that he can do to survive. And this was an example of it. And you looked at the AOL Time Warner
merger that they're working on.
Yeah. And you look at TBS and you look at all this stuff, and lo and behold, you couldn't find WCW in there.
Right.
You couldn't find all those losses. You couldn't even find where that number would have even been mysteriously written off. Right. You know what I mean? Where right. you knew what the number was, and internally they sure as hell knew what that number was. So it was just a way to inform people and say, hey, you're going to do this. You're trying to put me out of business. They stated that they wanted to put us out of business. Let's go.
If you were going to armchair quarterback everything that was happening in this first quarter, do you think perhaps one of the reasons that the business was down a little bit and this WrestleMania was down a little bit is because Vince was so focused on what they were doing and he should have perhaps focused that energy on what he was doing?
Hindsight being 2020, I wish that we had completely ignored them.
Yep.
Frankly, because when we realized we're doing everything that we found the territory guys did. Everybody was worried about what Vince was doing and trying to battle Vince instead of taking care of their own home. And I think that we became not worried, but yeah, you start watching your competitor because the things that they were doing were making some noise. So if we had focused less on that and more on our own stuff, and what I mean by less on that, ignore it,
right?
Completely ignore it.
Which has normally been the WWE way. Like you just
right. And I think that by doing it in a lot of ways, we gave them credibility and probably directed attention to them.
And a Vinceism is never let them see you sell. And now for the first time ever, he's selling a little bit.
Well, he's reacting for sure.
Right.
Yeah, definitely reacting. And I don't know that, again, when you look back at it all these years later, but then we persevered and
it worked out.
And it kept on. And again, when you look at the end story, it's, you get refocused, you take your resources and do everything that you can to take care of your business and stop worrying about their business. You will persevere in the end.
As you were sort of giving your speech there about persevering, I remembered when we did live shows way back when, and we did one in Pittsburgh and we had Mr. Jerry McDivitt join us and he was doing a Q&A with the crowd, which in hindsight, can you believe we pulled that off? That's one of the craziest things we ever did. But one of the questions was about the whole Shawn Razor lawsuit. Not Shawn and Razor, but you know what I mean? The Diesel Razor lawsuit where the company was suing WCW for stealing their likeness. Well, eventually Turner settled and he disclosed at our little meet and greet thing. Yeah, we got $2 million out of that. And then a few months later, we used that same money to buy their whole company. And is that not it's unbelievable when you think about it. Let's talk about, go ahead.
No, it truly is. And it's kind of like, Crockett buying the TBS time slot, that, Saturday night time slot and buying that. And Vince saying, okay, great. Hey, thank you very much. Cause we're going to use this
on WrestleMania.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I'm glad you brought that up because that is something I've thought about recently. We just did that long form deep dive interview with Jim Crockett. And of course, unfortunately we lost him earlier this year, but we talked about that extensively, but my follow up that he couldn't really answer anyway. So I didn't bother asking is, and maybe you've asked, do you think Vince could have actually pulled WrestleMania off without that cash infusion of that extra $1 million? I've always sort of gotten the impression he was borrowing from Peter to pay Paul to make that thing happen. And that extra $1 million couldn't have come at a better time.
I think that it helped, but he definitely could have pulled WrestleMania off. Yes. WrestleMania was going to happen no matter what.
Right. Well, let's talk about Justin Hawk Bradshaw, as it was. He debuts on Superstars here between the Rumble and WrestleMania. Did you ever imagine when you first saw that big bastard running around the locker room, he was going to have the career he had? Because I don't think a lot of people could have ever predicted what he became when you see just the initial version of him in the WWF.
Actually, I thought the initial version was going to be a huge megastar.
Yeah.
And it just never really took off. And I don't know if it was too stereotypical and too much of a clone of Stan Hansen, a younger version of Stan Hansen. To me, that's what I always got out of it. But I thought that John did it really well. And I tell you this, in meeting John from day one, you knew that he was going to be a huge star just because of the drive that he had in him and the no give up attitude.
Some other news and notes as we head in here. In Your House 6 is the pay-per-view between the Rumble and Mania. The highlights included Razor Ramon beating the 1-2-3 Kid in a diaper match. Thanks, Jim Cornette, I think. Shawn Michaels pinning Owen Hart in a great match. And then there was the cage match with Bret Hart and Diesel. In Your House 6 is really the beginning of the end for Razor and Diesel in the WWF. We've covered this in the archives, but leaving the arena that night, both Scott Hall and Kevin Nash have made up their minds they'll be going to WCW. Not too terribly long after this, once he gives notice, Scott Hall is then suspended for a failed drug test, and Kevin Nash is unhappy with Vince McMahon when he agreed with Bret on the finish of the cage match and that he not get hit with the power bomb. How frustrated was the office in general with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash?
I think it was probably more, this is going to sound like your dad, but it wasn't frustration or anger. It was more disappointment.
Right.
And thinking that, guys, you could be making a huge mistake. And in hindsight, you can say that changed the business forever when they went over there. And it certainly changed the landscape of how we do business in the business. So, in hindsight, looking at it, it was one of the greatest things that ever happened to us was they left and we had to create new stars.
I know we talked a lot about Razor Ramon in the archives, and you can check that out at somethingtowrestle.com. But as we're talking about WrestleMania, of course, everybody knows the original plan here was Razor Ramon versus Goldust in a Miami Alley fight. But the plan was changed once Razor was suspended and he had given notice because he was joining WCW. Piper gets in his spot. Had that not happened, it makes me feel like it's sort of a shoe-in that Razor was going to beat Goldust for the Intercontinental title, right? We wanted to give...
Had Razor been staying, yes.
Yeah. So at that point, when you know that, well, that was the plan, but if he's staying, would it have made sense? Could you have made an argument for, hey, let's beat him with this controversial character that he doesn't like on our biggest show? Or did that just not serve the purpose as well as, well, let's reestablish Roddy as a top guy because we know he's an asset for us for the rest of the year? Or so we would hope. We know he doesn't wind up being because he's in WCW by October.
Well, it's a couple of things. In real life, when it hits you, whether it's a failed drug test or it's a medical test or an unfortunate real life situation that happens, you have to deal with those things and you have to move on. Not always favorable to business, but you just have to, you got to deal with it at the time and move on. So we were hit with the drug deal. And again, you never asked. Vince would walk in and just tell us, hey, so-and-so's off for 6 weeks. Write them out. And we're looking at major markets with them in the main event and going, but can't we do? No. It's what it is. Take them out. So that wasn't advantageous to business by any stretch of the imagination. And those that want to argue that it was are wrong. You deal with it and you move on. It's business.
Let's briefly circle back to Roddy. I know we talked about it before, but what was this just a handshake deal with Roddy? Did you think, hey, we're going to have you in for X number of months? Because I know that Scott Hall's leaving for WCW, but it's not going to be too long. So's Roddy Piper. And it's kind of a short list to be a guy who was on WrestleMania and Starrcade the same year. I mean, cause later this year, he's going to main event WCW's biggest show of the year against Hulk Hogan. Did you think he was going to be with you for the long haul here? Or did you just try it and it maybe wasn't the fire that it once was? And let's just try some new things and move on.
Roddy's Roddy, and I'll throw Hulk in there too. Hulk is Hulk. That they're going to do what they're going to do. And while Roddy was one that would I have liked to have had him? Yeah, definitely. But Roddy wasn't what he wasn't what he was at that time.
Yeah.
And huge star, great guy. It's just, I don't think that
it was legacy at that point.
Yeah. And I don't think that Roddy was going to fit into basically what we were doing at the time, long term.
It's also, you know, it is something you got to at least reconcile in your head, where we've got these Billionaire Ted skits where we're saying Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage are fucking dinosaurs. Who would ever want to watch that? Oh, by the way, don't miss Roddy Piper on pay-per-view this weekend. Right?
Yeah. Roddy Piper was younger than both of them.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Is this really what we're doing right now?
Don't you look it up.
I'm looking it up right now.
He was or not.
He was born in 54.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan was definitely born before that. He was born in 53. So you got it.
Yeah. See, so we had the younger,
much younger. And, Savage, you want to guess what year he was?
it was 52.
52. You nailed it.
Yeah.
So, Savage, Hogan, then Piper. So yeah, Piper was younger than both of them. So yeah. Speaking
of the
new
generation, fucker.
Speaking of the new generation, the Ultimate Warrior agrees to return. And boy, you've talked a lot about Destrucity here in the past, available in the archives. When you're first talking with him conceptually about a return, and he's telling you about Destrucity, and he's telling you about Warrior University, and he's telling you about his comic book and his school, all this stuff. Does what he's going to do at WrestleMania even come up? JR, the only reason I mention this is JR often says, Connie, it always comes down to cash and creative. Well, I know you guys discuss the cash, and I know you don't talk cash here on the show, so we'll table that. But creatively, did we talk about, okay, we're going to bring you back at WrestleMania, and here's who we want you to work with, and here's what we envision for the match. When is that discussed?
I don't remember discussing it there. I think that the overall discussion before WrestleMania was long-term and in the future, and looking at different ways to promote the Warrior and his school and all that other stuff. I don't know that, we ever had the discussion with Jim specifically, okay, here's what we're doing at WrestleMania. WrestleMania was just a launching off point for him to return.
Right. Well, I wanted to bring it up because I am curious, because the relationship was delicate. I mean, at times I think you guys even had Linda correspond with him because he liked, for whatever reason, he liked dealing with her better. Who would have been the guy to go pitch the WrestleMania creative? Would Vince have said, hey, Bruce, call and run this past Jim, see what he's thinking? Or is that a call that Vince probably made himself?
No, that would be something that Vince would probably do. I certainly didn't do it.
So I guess the other question is the follow-up. How does Hunter Hearst Helmsley become the guy who draws the number? In theory, it feels like you probably want a heel with heat who people, definitely hate and want to see, catch a beat down here. So maybe the old, hey, who could give him a good match isn't necessarily applicable because it's going to be fast and we want it to be someone who has some heat. Well, how does that become Hunter as far as you recall?
Well, it was Hunter because of the guy that we did feel could give him the best match, and someone that had natural heat, and someone that we were moving on to something else with Marc Mero. So the Hunter pick was an easy one. We thought that if anybody could lead Warrior through a match and give him a big win, that was it. It was never meant to be the short match that it became.
Okay. Can you tell us how it became a short match?
Yeah, Warrior changed it that day.
What's that? How did that go down? Can you elaborate?
Warrior, I think Jerry Briscoe was the agent, and Warrior was like, no, this is the match we're going to do. And went back and forth. And at that point, it's get the match in the ring. And Hunter was a pro and was like, you know what? Let's just go do what we got to do and move on. We'll deal with all the other shit afterwards.
I want to ask a question here that I don't think anybody's ever asked before. So put some thought into it before you shit on it if I'm way off base. But hypothetically, if that's happening, the match is changing the day of, would that have also been the time from a management perspective that you would try to deliver some good news along with this bad news? The idea being sometimes and I'm not in the wrestling business, but I imagine if you're going to someone and you're saying, okay, we not only need you to sort of do him the favor here and do the honors, but we need it to happen in really strong fashion. And you might be thinking, okay, that means I'm definitely getting squashed. I'm getting buried. I'm getting all these bad words that we wrestling fans hear all the time, but don't you worry, Mr. Performer, because we got big plans for you. We're going to have you win the King of the Ring.
No.
Because what we've always heard, though, that the King of the Ring in 96 was originally going to be Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and that all changed, of course, after the curtain call, but the curtain call's like 6 weeks after this.
Yeah, no, that was not in the equation. It wasn't done. It was simply, that day. If anything, we're taking notes, at least I am, and the rest of us that had to deal with it of, damn it, Jim, you can't do this. And that's where we were. But no, this all happened day of, an hour of, and until you're in that situation, you can pontificate all you want, but it's at that point you have to
make a call,
do what you need to do to get the show on.
So I guess my question is, coming into WrestleMania, did you guys already have Hunter lined up in your mind to win the King of the Ring that year?
I don't know that we did. I don't know that we had completely decided by that point.
Does he win? Or I guess he didn't win that year, so it wouldn't have mattered, but did he become the favorite to win based on his professionalism and how he handled this situation?
It may have been in the back of the mind, not specifically. No.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the Observer. They write, the Huckster Nacho Man Billionaire Ted skit match will be on the pregame show, which pretty much removes the legal threats from that skit by using the likeness of Hulk Hogan, Ted Turner, and Randy Savage, all owned or controlled by WCW as part of an endeavor in which the public pays for it, which the pay-per-view falls into, but a free show doesn't. They would open themselves up for potential legal action down the road. So the idea is there was a match originally promoted that's going to have Nacho Man and Huckster and Billionaire Ted in a match on the pay-per-view. Now it's the pre-show. Did the possibility of litigation, since you guys were already thinking that way, cross your mind?
No, really and truly, the whole thought process behind it was, goddamn, let's just get over with this and move on. And no one was going to buy the pay-per-view for that. No, correct. And it was more along the lines of just, let's get it over with, put it on the pre-show, be done with it, and just be done. So by this point, you guys were just frustrated with the whole thing, but knew you had to have a payoff. So let's just get it over with. Okay. Is that one of those deals in hindsight where it seemed like a good idea on paper, but then it was just a fart in church? Like nobody cares. Well, what are we doing? It's funny maybe one or two times, but then it just became, okay. Yeah. We're over it. Yeah. We should also mention the February 19th episode of Raw. See Steve Austin's personality be referred to by Vince McMahon as Stone Cold. He drops the ringmaster gimmick a week later. Boy, Vince was pretty good at foreshadowing, was he not? Well, yeah. Yeah. Oh, boy. I'm just saying it's fun to see. What a coincidence. How all these seeds are being sown, right? Later this year, The Rock is going to debut at Survivor Series. Here, just before WrestleMania, the ringmaster is dropped. Now he's Stone Cold. The night after WrestleMania, ta-da, here's Mankind. There's a lot of moving parts here. It's an interesting time for the company. It was under the new and let's change, and we're, Razor and Diesel are moving on. Well, we got these guys right behind them. Mark Henry also debuts on a March edition of Raw. This feels like a Vince hire. Like Vince would have been really, really high on, hey man, this guy's going to be in the Olympics. We got a shot to have an Olympian on the roster. And look at that big bastard. I could just see Vince saying that. Was Vince a big advocate for Mark, or was that a Briscoe hire? No, Vince was a huge advocate for Mark because Terry Todd, who was Mark's manager and trainer from the University of Texas, had done the article on Andre the Giant for Sports Illustrated years and years before. And Terry had always kept in contact with Vince and vice versa, and says, hey, I've got, the world's strongest man. Mark Henry is, they do a combined lift to determine who the strongest man in the world is. And Vince saw some video of him at a dunk contest where Mark Henry dunked a basketball and did all this shit, and saw Mark as an athlete and potential to medal in the Olympics. So we definitely were. We were looking at Mark for a long, long time.
Let's talk a little bit about Roddy Piper. He announces that Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. Of course, that's the world title match since Bret's the champ and Shawn won the Rumble. It's going to be an Iron Man match. And he announces that the person who wins the most falls during the course of that hour wins the WWF World Championship. This is a Pat Patterson idea, as best I recall.
This was a Pat Patterson idea, and this was something that Pat had envisioned and really wanted to do at a WrestleMania, and thought that there were no two better talent in the world to pull it off.
We haven't seen an Iron Man match main event a pay-per-view since. It is, in hindsight, was that a stipulation that was better on paper than in execution?
I thought the execution was flawless. I thought it was great. I don't think that especially today in this environment, I don't know that the audience attention span.
There you go.
Is going to really want to sit there for an hour and watch a match. And, but I thought that the execution of it was flawless.
I know we're going to get some pushback, but I've always thought that the stipulation of an Iron Man match feels anticlimactic. Like, for instance, I'm an NBA fan, but you could just turn into the, last 5 minutes of a playoff game and it's going to come down to the wire. You don't have to watch the rest. Here it comes. So in an Iron Man,
if you're an NBA fan, most people want to watch the game.
I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that at all. But I think what's great about wrestling and all contact sports, wink, wink. So like boxing, UFC, you're on the edge of your seat thinking it could happen at any minute, but the match won't be over at any minute. The match will be over in 60 minutes. So there may be falls along the way, but I do think the enjoyment and the psychological engagement is different for an Iron Man. Do you disagree?
I think that, again, depending upon how you tell the story and the way that the story was told with no falls and the anticipation of one, was something that hadn't been done before. So you didn't have that. Okay, we're up 1-2, 2-1, well, oh my God, 3, and then you got to catch up. We took that out of the equation to, God damn, is anybody going to score a fall? And then you start asking, what if they don't?
Right.
So it was a different way to present it. Again, chocolate and vanilla, yogurt or ice cream, or gelato, pick your poison. I thought it was a great way and a different way to present.
I guess my follow-up to that is, since we know that this idea for an Iron Man was Pat's idea, does Pat present the initial idea with, but then neither one of the douchebags gets a pin. It goes to overtime at a pace.
Does
he pitch that at the same time?
What's that?
Does he pitch that on the initial pitch that, hey,
yes. Because in Pat's mind, it was like, these two go for an hour and you don't have a winner. It never been done.
So Bret has always said the build up for WrestleMania 12, because they did a great job here. I think most of the folks listening to this are around my age, and we, for the most part, love Rocky IV. And those silly training montages, man, they're just great stuff. And so we see Shawn doing all these, calisthenics and really cool training exercises with Jose Lothario. But Bret has said he's the old guy running in Calgary in his sweatsuit and rolling around getting stretched by his dad in the dungeon. Meanwhile, we're showing Shawn basically doing Footloose. He's being young and athletic. In hindsight, do you think he has a valid case there, or was it more about just the legacy and the story of, hey, he's from the Great North and his dad trained everybody in the dungeon. Everybody knows that. Let's show it.
Well, they're close to the same age. Maybe not. But it was about as close to reality as you could get.
It is.
So, is Bret arguing that he wanted to do Footloose? And it was authentic. It was the real thing. That is what Bret was doing. That is how people saw Bret, and Bret was portrayed himself.
I think he's
and
just
that is what Shawn was doing.
Thinking in hindsight that Shawn's training video looked, for lack of a better word, cooler.
I can't help that.
Okay, let's talk about Diesel.
I just produce them.
Diesel's starting to show a little bit of edge here. He's flipping off wrestlers on TV. He's saying he's going to kick the Undertaker's 7-foot ass. This sort of seems aggressive for this era of the WWF. Why the change here? Was this deliberate? Is this something he's doing on his own? Can you talk to us about that?
No, it was deliberate, and it was to give Diesel an edge, and just to, throw in a little bit more. Edge is a perfect word, but more reality and a little bit unpredictability. So it was, let's give Diesel's character a little bit more of a darker edge to it. And we hadn't done it. Not everybody was doing it.
I know that Diesel's going to lose his match with the Undertaker, but just like I asked with Shawn or Razor, I don't know why I keep saying that. If Razor wouldn't have given notice, he would have beaten Goldust and become Intercontinental Champion again. But instead, he's not on the card, calling audible, Piper's in there. Had Diesel not given notice, is there a chance that Diesel, fresh off of main eventing WrestleMania the prior year, would have beaten the Undertaker? And before you answer, I know our listeners are thinking, oh, that would have ended the streak. The streak wasn't a thing in 96. Nobody was talking about the streak in 96.
Right. The streak wasn't a thing, and that was definitely a possibility.
It's just fun to think about the what ifs. Like if one thing changes, it all changes. Cause like if he doesn't leave, does the whole streak conversation ever even happen if he wound up getting a win? Because it feels like you would have wanted him to win to make him strong for Shawn the next month on pay-per-view. So when you think about it that way, okay, he beat the Undertaker. So now he's in line for a title shot. He cheated to win. So maybe we'll do some house show rematches, but we got to keep him strong for Shawn the next month. But if he beats the Undertaker right there, that streak, it's gone before we ever got it going.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. The streak wasn't even entered into the conversation.
Yeah. Real quick, is Bret Hart's "You Start the Fire" one of the best music videos the company ever did at that point?
I thought it was tremendous. Again, and it to me, it told the story of Bret. You go back and you look at it, and that was Bret.
I gotta ask, I feel like we say it a lot. Is that Sahadi? Is that Pooch? Who's
probably
doing
like
this?
Chris Chambers and those guys putting that stuff together.
Jose Lothario being Shawn Michaels' manager. Is this sort of classic Rocky storytelling? Is he Shawn Michaels, Mick?
It was, and it was also, as you look at it, it was a way to give back to Jose for training Shawn. And man, we looked at it, and I got to admit, from my standpoint, Jose was a huge star back in his time, in his day. In Houston, he walked on water in different parts of the country. Michael Hayes made the argument, Jose wasn't over in Dallas. Okay, he wasn't over in Dallas.
Right.
At one point he was.
Right.
Long before the Freebirds were there, he definitely was over in Dallas. He was over in San Antonio. He was over in Florida and Puerto Rico and Mexico and everywhere that Jose worked. Jose always worked on top. He did train Shawn Michaels. And again, it was a real story of Bret going back to his dad, going back to his roots, Shawn going back to his roots. And you show the different styles of how they prepare for the match and still get to the same place.
Let's talk about Marc Mero and Sable. They're going to sign with the company here in the first quarter of the year. And I think you've told the story before that when Vince meets Rena, he thinks, oh man, we got to do something here. But we've also heard over the years that Vince really liked the Johnny B. Bad character, but that's a Turner property, not something he could actually do. But you also said just a few minutes ago, you had plans for him and Hunter on the other side. So we're going to see Sable, escort Hunter to the ring and all that jazz. What can you tell us about what your hopes were when they first come in and were they aligned with Vince's? Or is this one of those where Vince is like, you don't see it, I'm going to prove you wrong or whatever?
Well, nobody had seen it.
Right.
All anybody had ever seen of Marc Mero was Johnny B. Bad.
Right.
No one had ever seen Marc Mero. And while Marc was a really nice guy and personable, the Johnny B. Bad character was over the top. It was flamboyant. It had charisma. And playing that character was something that Marc Mero did well. Playing Marc Mero on screen, didn't do well, because that person didn't have the charisma of Johnny B. Bad, didn't have the presence of Johnny B. Bad, and everything that Marc tried to do to bring out some of those Johnny B. Bad characteristics came across as forced and not genuine. The eyes and all that shit, it just didn't feel real. There was nothing about it that felt real. And then you realize when you go back and you're watching shit, it's why if someone would send a tape, here's my work, and it's a highlight tape, throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
Because all that tells me is you can't do anything else other than a couple of big moves, flip, flop, and fly, and yeehaw. Great. Send me a match, you doing a job.
Right.
Show me how you can work. Show me how you can tell a story. Send me a promo, not clips of 10 different promos. Tell me a story. And, you kind of look back and go, God damn, we were infatuated with Johnny B. Bad, not the guy playing Johnny B. Bad. And we got the guy playing Johnny B. Bad.
I think it was Chris Hero who I heard say something like, back then, the way to send a tape to get noticed was you would send a babyface promo and a babyface match that you won. And then you would send a heel promo and a heel match that you lost, but you had to show your range that, hey, I can do everything. And let me show you a full promo and the match that goes with it, and another full promo and a match that goes with it. One where you win, one where you lose. Would that still be the strategy these days, or would you recommend something different?
I mean, that definitely helps. I think nowadays in the era of YouTube and what have you, you send links.
Yeah, of course.
Of my highlight shit. But I think that the business has changed too quite a bit, where we don't have an opportunity to tell long stories and matches and what have you. You got to display that you have a personality and you've got some charisma and you can talk a little bit. Then it was, you didn't know these people. There was no internet. You didn't have the opportunity to go and search. The only thing that you had is what they sent you most of the time. And for Marc Mero, all you had seen was what he had done on WCW.
Also too, I know we're sort of talking in circles here, but I've heard other folks say that, anybody can have a great 20-minute match, but can you show that you're a star in a TV match that's, 4, 6, 8 minutes? That's probably important too, right? I mean, the WWE is a television company. Sure. I know they do a lot of other stuff, but if you can only really look like a star in 38 minutes, you're probably not ready for TV, right?
It depends if you can do both, and
right.
You probably want to show both.
There you go.
But when you can only do one or the other,
it's tough.
Yes.
Well, which one was Hakushi better at? Because he finishes up around this time. What was the big miss about him? Because the hardcore fans listening to this absolutely loved his stuff. I would say his name, but I know you'd say, God bless you, or Gesundheit. So Hakushi, why was it a miss in hindsight?
Wow. I just don't think that Hakushi ever connected with the audience. And I was a big fan of Hakushi. I loved his look. I loved his work. But I think that there was a bit of a style conflict and didn't really gel all the time with everybody. Not just anybody could work Hakushi style and or vice versa. But I just don't know that Hakushi ever really connected with the audience.
It is fun to think about from my perspective. What if he could have hung around and been an opponent for some in-your-house match against Shawn Michaels when Shawn was the world champ? Hakushi and Shawn could have had a great match, I think.
Yeah, I think they probably could have. I thought that Hakushi and Bret had good matches,
yeah.
but then at the same time, Bret ate him up.
Right.
It's a different style and just a different, the Japan style when that's all you have done is different. It's kind of like lucha. It's different. And you have to be able to incorporate it into what you're doing with who you're working with.
You guys had in prior years done like I don't guess it was called Access just yet, but it was like a big fan fest, like a wrestling convention around WrestleMania. You didn't do one here for 12. Was Vince not sold on the idea? Were the others not successful, or was it just a function of we didn't have the space?
Two things. A, we didn't have the space. The convention center space was extremely expensive and very large, and they really weren't working with us that much. And the cost of doing it and bringing everyone that you needed, you go back and look at the early ones, the staffing of that was a lot of office staff. The cost of bringing that staff and/or having to hire a staff on the West Coast, it just was cost prohibitive.
In years past, you've told us that, Sky Dome and certainly the Coliseum, they made presentations to you guys about why you should bring WrestleMania here. But you've also said that it was years after this show here in 96 at WrestleMania 12 until folks started to sort of bid on the thing. And you guys actually started getting paid to bring the show there. This is in that down period where nobody was really clamoring for it and you had to negotiate the best deal you could.
Yeah. And again, this was more of it was WrestleMania,
right?
But in many ways, it was just another pay-per-view as far as the presentation. Yes, it was WrestleMania, and yes, you did bring in people from all over the world for that event. It took time for it to grow into the mega event that it became.
In the final run up to WrestleMania here, the company would sell out Madison Square Garden for the first time since WrestleMania 10, but it's also the first house show it's sold out since the mid 80s. And you've got Bret Hart teaming with the Undertaker to take on Shawn Michaels and Diesel on top. Was this a sign to everyone that business might actually be turning around?
Business was kind of turning around in live events. And, the hope is, okay, now we're losing Bret, we're losing Diesel and Razor. You got to capitalize, and hopefully that's why the Mankind's coming in, and Stone Cold versus the Ringmaster, and Wild Man Marc Mero and the Warrior. So you're looking at what's going to replace that, and trying to build.
In that 3-month period, we'll call it January, February, March. Is this the most eventful run up to Mania ever at this point? Did any WrestleManias after it even compete? I mean, when you're talking about, Marc Mero's coming in, and Mankind's coming in, Stone Cold's changing his name, the Warrior's back, Roddy Piper's back, just on and on. It feels like, man, there's a lot of moving parts here in the first quarter of the year. And I don't know that that's necessarily the case with any WrestleMania before or after.
Yeah, I'm going back trying to think, and with the exception of probably WrestleMania 9, where you had Yoko was new and Bret was different and new. Probably not. And not only that leading up to it, but the change that was coming afterwards.
Yeah. With Razor out and Diesel out. Yes. I mean, there's so many. It's just, I've been so excited to cover this one for a long time, and I'm glad we waited till the 25-year anniversary. We're going to get to the pay-per-view. Before I do, though, I want to ask, was there any hesitation about putting Shawn and Bret on for 60 minutes on top? I mean, I know that Pat was sold. Was Vince sold? We've heard, and I don't know if this is fair, and I'm sure you're going to set me straight, but we've heard a lot that Vince is not a wrestling fan. I mean, sure, it's the backdrop to the stories. He wants to make movies and tell stories, and he's into the characters, and that is what WWE is. But this is 60 minutes of wrestling. Did he think, given that his bread and butter was like a 7-8 minute Hulk Hogan match for so many years at WrestleMania, that this was a major risk, or not so much?
Not so much. And I think the myth that Vince isn't a wrestling fan is just a myth. And that's a label that people that don't know him put on him.
Right. Let's talk about the way the match or the show was received. The readers of The Observer gave it 68.7% thumbs up, 24.8% thumbs down, 6.4% thumbs in the middle. You watched it this week for the first time in 25 years. What did you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle?
I'll give it a thumbs up. It was enjoyable.
Yeah, I give it a thumbs up.
But it's a nostalgic look at it right now. It's 25 years, but yes, I do. I think for the time it was fun.
Once upon a time, you guys were doing a lot of pre-shows, and you would call them free-for-alls. So you would go to like the TV guide channel that shows you, hey, here's what's coming up in the next half hour, or whatever. And almost a picture-in-picture view for a lot of those folks would be the pre-show from the WWF. And if you had a different cable provider or a satellite dish, you would just get it full screen. Well, there you would see the Nacho Man, Hulkster, and Billionaire Ted, and they do a skit that just dies within seconds. Meltzer would say they aired a tape segment of a high school gym filled with nothing but senior citizens. An even older huckster came to the ring with a walker and expired. Nacho Man tried to climb the ropes and fell off, and he also expired. And then Billionaire Ted talked about how he didn't care that his two biggest stars had died because he could just buy more stars because he can't create them himself. And then a big guy in a black robe came in with the FTC on his outfit. Ted turned around, saw him. He had a heart attack and he's left for dead. Pretty terrible segment. Did you shoot this? Who put this together?
I did, but it also goes to show you the inaccuracies and ineptness of Dave Meltzer. It was not a high school gym.
Okay.
Again, it's the little things.
What was it?
Journalist.
What was it?
Would get right, and not just a guy making up shit and writing whatever the hell they want to write.
Okay. Well, that's all I had to go on. So chat me up. What happened?
It sucked. It was terrible. It was get through it. And, not, when you look back on it, not one of our prouder moments, and not anything that you would point back to, and go, oh, hey, remember that? I did go, oh, hey, remember that.
Did you shoot that in LA? Did you shoot it back on the East Coast?
Shot in the studio.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Oh. Yeah, it was shot in the studio with people from the office. I love that he says they're all elderly people. He's just like, yeah, thanks for paying attention there,
David. Hey, so let's talk about your brother. He's got one of the biggest moments of his career. It's always, especially in this era, man, if you got on a WrestleMania, your career was made for a lot of guys because it was held in such high regard. And that's certainly the case here. The Body Donnas, including your brother, are going to win the tag titles in a tournament final over the Godwins in 5 minutes and 21 seconds. Phineas would set up Skip for the slop drop. Sonny lifts her skirt, shows the panty shot. He's stunned. That allows Skip to win with a schoolboy 1 star. And by God, Dr. Tom Pritchard is a WWF tag team champion. Even if it's on the pre-show, pretty big time moment for your brother here, huh?
Yeah, not as big as being the best man at my wedding, but yeah, pretty big.
Was he pumped about this, or was your brother so far into his career that it was just another day at the office?
I think that both. I think it was another day at the office, but at the same time, as much as he loves the business, I think he was pumped for it.
What about Sonny and Chris? Were they pumped?
I think so. I sure hope so. But I think by this time with them, that there's a little disillusionment.
You got it.
Is that a word?
That's a word. Yeah.
I'm going with it if it is, and I'll make it up and just stick by it, by God. That means they're disillusioned and they have a mint.
So they were just sort of over the major wrestling scene or the politics of the WWF or the schedule or whatever.
Yeah, I think they were tired of being Skippy and Sonny.
Oh, okay. He wanted to be a badass.
Yeah, he wanted to be a tough guy.
Yeah. Let's get to our first match here on the show. It's Vader teaming with Owen Hart and Davey Boy Smith. They're going to pick up a win over Jake Roberts, Ahmed Johnson, and Yokozuna. They get plenty of time, 12 minutes and 51 seconds. Vader would pin Roberts with a Vader bomb. Meltzer would say there were pops for the signature points of the match and for Vader Yoko, but not sustained heat. 2.5 stars. Originally, this was supposed to be, I believe, Vader versus Yoko, but there's some concerns about whether or not Yoko can do a full match. So, man, if we throw Owen and Davey and Jake and Ahmed, we can get enough camouflage together, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this was supposed to be the spotlight for Vader. And unfortunately, you didn't have that one single opponent for Vader to dominate. So you did have to kind of put things around it. But considering the talent that was in there, it wasn't horrible.
No, it wasn't. I mean, it's interesting to go back in hindsight and say this and not be joking around, but Ahmed Johnson was over and you guys were pushing him. So you need to have a spot for him on the Rumble. You're also trying to establish Jake Roberts and his redemption story, a former top star, a legacy performer everyone's familiar with. You want to highlight Vader as your new big badass. Yoko just 2 years ago was in the main event for the world title. I mean, he main evented 2 WrestleMania. So he has to be there if you can find a spot for him. And what else needs to be said about Owen and Davey, 2 of the best performers on the whole roster. But it is weird that, hey, we don't really have anything for all those guys. So fuck it. Throw them in a 6-man.
There you go.
Next up, we get the first half of the Roddy Piper Goldust match that took place in a Hollywood backlot taped the day before. Meltzer would say after editing, the footage aired in a 4-minute and 23 segment, 4-minute and 23 second segment. It was basically a collection of movie fighting scenes and was about as good as it could have been. Goldust came in driving a gold caddy. Piper sprayed it with a water hose and bashed out the windows with a baseball bat. Piper got a few bat shots in, smashed Goldust into a food table and hit him hard with a garbage bin and threw several garbage cans on him. He then sprayed Goldust with the hose, slammed him on the hood of a car, gave him a fist drop on the hood, and Piper's punches were so stiff, he appeared to open up his hand, and Goldust was opened hard way in 3 possible different spots. He continues to break it down, but it gets rough to the point that there's a low blow. We're ramming Piper into a garbage bin. And then Piper even gets in front of the car and Goldust basically runs him over and Piper's holding on to the hood. And then of course we get the famous silliness where Piper gives chase with a white Ford Bronco. But as they're doing this gives, I guess a let me up for what we're about to see. We've talked about this on the Goldust episode and the Piper episode, but let's briefly revisit. What do you remember of the Backlot Brawl, when it was shot, and how difficult it was to put together?
Well, first of all, of course, since we're talking about the person that doesn't know what they're talking about out in California writing this shit, it was done over a week before WrestleMania. Shot in the studios. I believe we were at MGM Studios, Disney Studios there in California. Mitch Ackerman and Larry Burton actually got us the use of the studios if we would use the guy, what the hell was his name? Kevin Conway from Taxi and Grease.
Okay.
And it was like, oh, hey, yeah, you just got to shoot him and make sure that he's, seen in the shot or something like that. And go, oh yeah, okay, we'll get right on that. Don't worry,
Jeff Conaway.
What is it?
Jeff Conaway.
Jeff Conaway. And it was like, okay, we shot him. Didn't make a lot of the final cut, but this was absolutely brutal because you had 2 pros in Piper and Goldust who didn't want to smarten up the Hollywood crowd. Even though we walked through it, and there were people there and shit, they beat the living shit out of each other. Piper broke his wrist, broke part of his hand and his wrist in the fight. And Goldust, I think, got whacked in the head pretty good with one of those shots. And I love that, Meltzer talks about how it was a stunt double to do the run over scene. Nope, that was Roddy Piper. That was Roddy saying, hey, come on, man, come, just gun it. Trust me. If I don't make it, run me over. It'll be great TV. And back in those days, we did stupid shit like that. Can you imagine having that conversation now?
No.
You'd have 9 ways from Sunday, making sure everyone was protected. But there was faith in Roddy that Roddy was going to move and he would get out of the way. And the car hit Roddy and hit him pretty good. So all of that stuff, it was absolutely brutal, but I thought in the end, it looked great. And it was one of those things that you didn't know what to expect going in. And then after you saw it, it was like, all right, I think that in some ways the audience would have been almost happy with just what they saw at that point.
Yeah, I would totally agree. It could have ended right then. But the Ford Bronco, like we've briefly touched on this before. There was even an idea, by the way, if you're not picking up on this, this is right after, or not right after, but not too terribly long after the famous, or infamous rather, OJ Bronco chase. OJ Simpson, of course, was accused of murdering 2 people, including his ex-wife. And, he, along with his friend Al, went on a slow speed chase through the streets of LA in a white Ford Bronco. So we're going to recreate that here, but that wasn't as far as the OJ talk went for this show, right?
No, there was at one point that, Roddy actually wanted to fight OJ, and have that as part of WrestleMania and beat the shit out of OJ. That's what Roddy wanted. We thought about it probably for a few seconds, but America, I don't think would have bought that or been interested. I think that there was enough sentiment on both sides, those that thought OJ was innocent and or that were okay with what allegedly happened, and those that felt that he was guilty and murdered 2 people and got away with it. He was acquitted, and sad story, man. Just a sad story on every part. But the white Bronco was there. It was Hollywood and it was California. So let's have some fun with it. And that scene of OJ traveling down whatever highway it was so iconic.
Right.
That anytime you saw that, you knew what people were talking about. If you were talking about ratings back in the day, holy shit, I'd love to know what the ratings were for the Bronco chase, because people were glued to their television wondering what the hell was going to happen. We were going to Train, Ricky Medlock. Help me out here. What's the name of his band? Ricky's band. We were going to a concert. We were going to see Ricky Medlock in New Haven.
Are you saying Leonard Skinner?
He is with Leonard Skinner now, but he had a band.
Oh, Blackfoot?
Blackfoot. Thank you. God, I went blank.
Well, I was like, I know you're not talking about Leonard Skinner. I mean, you get your ass kicked not remembering that.
Oh my God. No, I definitely. But, we sat in my condo just watching this thing, mesmerized. Taker and Raven. We just sat there watching this thing going, oh my God, what's this ending going to be like? And so the white Bronco was iconic.
It was. Who pushed for that idea? I feel like you're sort of taking credit for that.
I don't know who the hell came up with that. Frankly, it was something. It was probably one of those things that were suggested in jest,
right?
That then became a real thing.
Let's keep it moving here. Steve Austin is going to pin Savio Vega in 10 minutes and 8 seconds. The finish would see Vega spin kick the ref, who sold it forever. Vega then kicks Austin in the face for a fall, but no ref. Ted DiBiase then gets the $1 million belt, gives it to Austin, who hits Vega with it twice, and then puts on the $1 Million Dream. But the ref's still out. It's a pretty famous moment here. Ted gets a Coca-Cola from an official and just dumps it right on referee Tim White's face, who's now revived, sees Vega out, signals for the finish. Meltzer would say both guys worked hard, but there was no heat and the finish died live. The work itself was good in spots and slightly off in other spots. I know we've talked a lot about how Steve Austin really thanks Savio Vega for helping getting him up and going. Goldust tells the same story, that he was very important to the development of his character. But this match here, not the best WrestleMania match Steve Austin ever had.
See, I thought it was great. I thought it was a damn good match. Finish was awkward and not carried out well, but I don't think that was Steve or Savio's fault.
Right.
Just happened that way. But I thought the match itself was damn good. And again, hell, I'm a wrestling fan, so I enjoyed it because I thought they told a good story and got to where we wanted to get to.
Do you think Steve and Savio were happy with it? I mean, this is right before he's stone cold. I mean, it's not too far removed here.
I think they were. I think they were because it was a damn good match. I know they weren't happy with the finish of it. It just, again, felt forever and contrived.
Let's talk about what's next. The Ultimate Warrior is going to pin Hunter Hearst Helmsley in 1 minute and 38 seconds with 3 clotheslines, a shoulder block, a press, and a splash. Meltzer would say Warrior got by far the biggest reaction on the show when he came out. It was amazing how quiet the crowd got after the ring intro, but since Helmsley did the pedigree right away and Warrior didn't sell it and went right to the finish, the crowd picked up right away. Helwig was a little smaller than at his peak, but he's also 39 years old, and he was quite a bit larger and more cut when he returned than the last time. He gave it a dud rating. A lot to unpack here. Warrior squashes a young heel who's been decently pushed, totally obliterates the guy's finish. Not exactly a highlight reel moment for Hunter Hearst Helmsley's career and what we know he's going to go on to do.
Absolutely hated it. The entrance was cool. The entrance with the pyro and the Warrior symbol and all that shit was pretty cool. But beyond that, I hated it.
Who put all that together for y'all? Like the presentation with the Warrior fireworks and all that?
We did.
Okay.
I mean, we did it. We had, obviously somebody built that and did the pyro and shit, pyro guys, but that was something that we had come up with to be able to carry around and be a part of his entrance going forward.
Let's, anything else you want to say about this Warrior thing? I mean, I got to tell you, as a non-wrestling fan at the time, I didn't get back in for a few more weeks, or I guess it was a few more months. Even I was paying attention because the Warrior was back. I mean, to your casual fan, your lapsed fan, that's about as big of a name as you could have brought back, right?
I think so, especially at that time. Yes. And I think there was a big part of the audience that maybe thought they would never see him back. So it was a big deal for him to come back, and Warrior had his fans. Warrior had a fan base, but I hated it.
Where were you for this show? Are you on headsets in the back?
Was pretty much all around, but I'm pretty sure I was doing Gorilla this night.
When you see, did you know what the plan was going in? Or, I mean, were you given heads up that, hey, the match is shorter now? Or,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
you're not happy about it,
but you probably, I know you may not have loved it, but you kept an open mind until you saw it. And once you saw it, what did you think? I mean, did you immediately think, fuck, we killed that guy and for something that's probably not sustainable, not a good idea? Or what was Vince's reaction?
Vince watched it on air live, wasn't really happy with it. And I was just pissed off about it. I felt that it was abusing the fact that Vince wasn't there backstage, and it wasn't good. I didn't think that it did really much for Warrior. If Warrior just beat a piece of shit, then he just beat a piece of shit. If he beat a guy that, was out there and gave him some kind of challenge, then it would have been a bigger win. So for me, I was not happy. I knew it beforehand, and I was not happy with it when they went to the ring, and I was even less happy when they came back. So didn't like it. I hated it.
Can you verbalize what you didn't like about it? What you hated it?
I thought it just squashed Hunter and didn't do anything. If that's all we were going to do, we could have just said, hey, Warrior returns at WrestleMania, and send Mario Mancini out there to do that.
Let's talk about, the next match here. It's a segment that doesn't air to the live audience, but they're doing an interview introducing Wildman Marc Mero, who did a heel interview until Helmsley comes out and the two start arguing and fighting. Helmsley then blamed the fight on the woman who they called Sable that accompanied to the ring that night. What'd you think of this? I mean, okay, we squashed him, but we're giving him something to do, but we're also introducing a new character. What'd you think of this vignette or skit?
Well, to me, at least, it gave Hunter something back a little bit. And for Mero, this was his introduction. And it was okay, but more than anything, I think that night, it's like I felt really bad for Hunter because it just was not a great day.
Tell me a little bit about the relationship he had with Shawn. We know the year prior, Hunter's hanging out backstage. I think Terry Taylor recommends that he try to ride with Kevin Nash and Shawn Michaels. They become fast friends. They're off to the races. They're the clique now, for lack of a better word. Shawn is going to be the top guy here. It's his crowning moment, but he's obviously pulled in a lot of directions and he's waiting for his sort of crowning moment this night. Is he giving any pushback to the way his pal's being treated here, or is that not yet a thing?
That's, for that, no.
Okay. Next up, we get the Undertaker and Diesel. Undertaker pins Diesel in a long match, 16 minutes and 46 seconds with a tombstone. Meltzer would say the match was slow moving and didn't have much heat, but it was better than you'd expect considering who was involved. Diesel basically pounded Undertaker for most of the match. Finally, he used his jackknife, then smirked forever, allowing Undertaker to sit up. He did it again. And then when he went back for the pin, Undertaker grabbed him by the throat. Diesel used the back suplex and Undertaker sat up again. Undertaker then finished off Diesel with a nice flying clothesline, a choke slam, and the tombstone. 2.25 stars. What'd you think? In hindsight, was this too long or you dug it?
No, I thought it was fine. This was a much anticipated match against two of the biggest stars in the company, and they delivered. And it was a WrestleMania caliber match from the build up to it, marquee wise, and the match itself, I thought delivered.
Fair or unfair, Kevin Nash earned a reputation in WCW for not always being easy to do business with. Was he easy to do business with here? He's another guy I used to hear say, hey man, I didn't know what type of year I was going to have until I got my WrestleMania payoff. So with that in mind, I seem to think he'd be on his best behavior here at WrestleMania. Am I wrong?
I wouldn't say he was on his best behavior at all. There was, bitching about the size of their pictures in the program or something like that. Day of WrestleMania. And it's like, come on, are you serious? It was little things like that just didn't, what should have been a much smoother, match. I just think was marred with little, petty stuff. At the end of the day, Diesel went out and delivered, and I thought did a damn good job in the ring. Getting there sometimes can be more difficult than it has to be.
How great was the camera shot when Diesel's laying in the middle of the ring after the match is over and you've got that wide shot and it's zooming out? I don't know why, but that shot still sticks out to me from this show.
Told a lot of stories.
It really did. Do you know, at this point, was Taker the locker room leader we know he would become in later years? Was he already sort of the enforcer, the godfather of the locker room, if you will? And how was he with the way Shawn and I keep saying it, Razor and Diesel had handled their business?
Taker's Taker, and Taker's a pro through and through. So the way that he handled it and getting the match in the ring was good. The fact that he allowed outside forces to kind of get in his head a little bit, it's just a shame. But at the end of the day, Undertaker was able to go out and perform and have a hell of a performance in a marquee match and a marquee show. So to that, kudos to him.
Let's talk about the next skit, man. During the show, they continually show scenes of the OJ chase, trying to put over that it was,
whoa. Wait a minute. No, we actually had a helicopter that was
following. Off, Bruce. Come on. I love you just trying to sell the shit, grinning ear to ear. So when Goldust arrives to the building to pick up Marlena, he bumps into Pat Patterson, who was either back there just for the weekend or back involved in booking, depending on who you talk to. So that's directly from the Observer. I guess this was I guess that's one of Meltzer's, or one of Pat's, what was the word you used? Hiatuses. But you've sort of said before that Pat would often sort of get frustrated because he was getting older and he would say, oh, I'm too old for this. I'm retired. I'm going home. But then he'd pop back up for the big shows, right?
No, this was actually the first show Pat had been to, I think, since he had retired.
Okay.
And at that time.
Right.
the first time. The first big screen TV. But Pat had, been talking to us and been talking to Vince about wanting to do this match. And I was getting married. Pat and Louie wanted to be there for the wedding.
Okay.
So he's like, I'm coming to your wedding. I'm going to go to WrestleMania. I just want to watch that match live. Well, instead of watching the match live, fuck you, Pat. You're going to work.
Right.
You're going to put that fucking match together.
Right.
So congratulations. Yes, you come on out and have a good time and come to the wedding and watch WrestleMania, but sprinkle some Pat Patterson dust on it.
How hard was this to shoot from a continuity standpoint, where you acknowledged we shot the Backlot Brawl stuff several days prior, and now these guys have to show up in similar condition, which I understand why you sort of wet everything down, because that way, if it was raining or wasn't raining, it was wet either way. I get that. But when they show back up, you need someone to have had a photo of Goldust to make sure he sort of looked like he did when that brawl was done. And same with Piper, right?
Absolutely. And, blood dries and turns brown. So, they're in the same clothes. And on top of that, Roddy had a broken wrist and hand.
Right.
So that was the reason for Roddy grabbing the tape on the way to the ring, so that he could at least tape it up and go out and do what he did to kind of strengthen his wrist and hand a little bit there. Because he obviously didn't have it when we left, and Roddy wasn't going to go out with a cast and just say, oh, well, figure out a way to get that on him. He's like, no, just take it all off and I'll recast afterwards. Was
the Pat cameo planned? Like, hey,
no, that was Pat being in the fucking way.
Okay.
Not knowing we're coming through live.
I'm just saying, sometimes there's an Easter egg, right?
No, there's no Easter eggs. Those are fuck ups.
Okay. So when they caught you taking a shit in Titan Tower last year during COVID, you were really just shitting in your full Brother Love gear. Okay. All right. I got it. My apologies.
Damn.
So Goldust gets on top of Piper, basically
stop saying that. Attempting
to screw him and wanting to start kissing him. And then he goes to the top rope. Piper shakes the rope. Goldust crotches himself. Goldust comes back with headbutts, kisses Piper, which leads to a Superman comeback. Piper grabs Goldust's crotch, starts squeezing, throws a knee to the groin, starts spanking him. Then he rips the costume off, and we reveal that Goldust was wearing black women's undies. And we've talked about this in the Goldust episode. How much fun did Vince have with this creative of, what if he was wearing negligee?
I think that was probably more us than Vince. Kind of is what would Goldust be wearing?
Right.
And, getting all of that out there. So that was, I can't pass that one off. That was more of a trying to have fun with it, and talent had input on that as well.
Let's talk about what's next. It's the main event, and it's, before I do, Roddy got a cool little moment here with his son Colton in the ring. And we saw this in more recent years with Goldberg and his son. It's kind of a sweet thing. Is this something that was impromptu, or did Piper run it past and say, hey, what if?
Roddy asked me if he could bring his son in after the ring, and that was something that was really important to Roddy, and I thought it was great.
It's very cool. Let's talk about our main event. It's Shawn Michaels. He's going to achieve the boyhood dream. It's finally coming true. Bret Hart is now, he's the top dog. He's been the top dog for a long time. He's the next Hulk Hogan. They're going to go 60 minutes. There's not going to be a winner. We got Gorilla Monsoon in there with Earl Hebner to sort of the pregame introductions. I liked all that, by the way, the squaring off, explaining the rules. It had a big fight feel to it. It's not something that we saw a lot. Who would have been a big advocate for that and pushed for it in this era?
Conrad, I have no idea what you just asked me.
Well, before, normally it's just coming to the ring and then we're done.
Oh,
here,
you mean the championship introductions?
We get the guys and all right, I've spoken to you both and given you instructions in the locker room, all that. That's like a boxing thing.
I think that was kind of a pat idea. Let's slow it down. Let's make a big presentation out of this and do something different. And we would always call those championship introductions.
Right.
For the big ones.
Well, I like it. The match itself is phenomenal. Friend of the show, TJ Wilson, I think calls this his favorite match ever. And I know a lot of our listeners agree. I think it's maybe the most overrated WrestleMania main event in history, just because, or not just WrestleMania main event, in my opinion, the most overrated match in history. I really like it, but just the psychology.
You think this is the most overrated match in history?
I'm not saying it's the worst. I'm saying it's the most, the idea that anyone could say this is the best match ever is just fucking laughable to me. Like there's no chance.
Oh my God.
And I'm not criticizing the work. I just hate the psychology of the Iron Man thing. I think if you remove that and they just do it, it's fine. But the Iron Man thing just takes me out of it. It's like, all right, I'll tune in with 59 minutes. Like I'll see the last minute and I'll know what happened. Cause I think I'll order a pay-per-view, Bruce. And I know you're making fun and I can see you rolling your eyes at me, but when I watch a Mike Tyson fight, man, I want to see who wins. I want to see the finish to this thing. I want to see somebody get knocked out. Well, I watch UFC the same way. Like, oh, look, a cool go-go plotter. Oh, he's passing the guard. I don't give a shit about that. Tap a motherfucker out, knock him out. That's what I'm here to see. I want to see a finish. And so when we go 60 minutes and we don't get a finish, you used to use an analogy about Vince. He didn't want to build to a finish. He just wanted to finish for an hour. Well, this had no finish.
But it did have a finish.
I didn't like the finish.
Okay. Well, that's you. You're wrong.
I agree. Listen, people take me to task for this all the time on Twitter. Send me your hate tweets. Hey, it's Conrad. You guys do the overtime announcement. I like the idea of that, by the way, because it gives Bret a little bit of heat. This has been broken down a lot over the years. What'd you think of that creative of having Bret be able to take the angle of, hey, wait a minute, I won according to the rules. Now we're changing the rules.
I loved it because it's exactly what Bret would do. And it was logical. Hey man, it's a draw. Champion stays champion on a draw. You couldn't beat me. Then you go, okay, still an Iron Man match. We're gonna go to sudden death rules now. First person to score falls winner.
Meltzer would write, Hart left with the belt, but Gorilla Monsoon told the ref to restart the match with a sudden death stipulation, which had never previously been advertised. The pop for that announcement was shockingly tepid. You agree with that? It did feel like they expected a big, yeah, and it wasn't really there. Was the crowd just exhausted by that point?
I think the crowd was exhausted, but I also think that the announcement could have been done a little bit better. Bigger. Yes.
So in the overtime, Shawn immediately hits 2 super kicks, gets the pin in 1:52, celebrates in the ring for several minutes afterwards, nearly choking up. In the celebration, Michaels would kiss Helen Hart and hug Bret's son Blade. Bret walked out of the ring at the finish rather than doing the symbolic in-ring passing of the torch. Meltzer gave it 4.25 stars. You've called this 60-minute match here essentially a tribute to Pat Patterson. Is that still the best way to describe it?
Yeah, I think so. And I also say it's a tribute to the great work of Shawn and Bret. Anyone that is a fan of wrestling would watch this match and go, holy shit. Those two are the best, they were the best of the time and the best of the era. And definitely, I just thought it was great. I loved the story that they told. Bret talks about being an artist. On that night, he was fucking Rembrandt.
Yeah.
And Shawn, everything about it to me was just magnificent, from Shawn doing the life slide and all that stuff. Incredible shit.
Meltzer was at the show and reported that he saw the crowd leaving during the match. Do you think those are just the same?
Whole crowd left. All of them left.
Oh, he didn't say that. But listen, my dad and I are guilty of this sometimes. We want to beat the traffic. Alabama gets up 21-0. We're like, let's just beat the traffic. Do you think it's more of that, or was the crowd perhaps since we acknowledge he got the biggest announcement or the biggest pop, they were there to see WrestleMania, and they were really excited to see the return of the Ultimate Warrior. And hey, I've seen 40 minutes of this. Okay, I get it. They're good wrestlers. Let's beat the traffic.
I think that for the live event audience, the crowd that was there, I don't think had the drama of, what's going to happen in the commentary, telling you what's going to happen and not knowing. To them, the match is over.
Right.
So it took, it could have been done a lot quicker with Gino and get in there, and the announcement could have been better.
Talk to me a little bit about Bret and what he's going to do afterwards. Him taking time off after the match, that really sells the impact of the match. Of course, we know he's going to go work on Lonesome Dove and all that, but I thought him taking a step away after this really, made this seem even bigger, right?
Absolutely. And it gave a finality to it, and one of, hey kids, here's the new guy, go. And you don't have an old guy to compare him to.
I think Bret has, way back when, used to bring up fairly repeatedly that Shawn Michaels is telling Earl Hebner here after the match to tell Bret to, quote, get the fuck out of the ring. And you can go back and even see his lips and sort of read his lips and see that's what he's saying. Do you remember hearing about that then, or was it years later before that ever comes up?
I don't remember hearing about it then. I've heard about it since, but that was also just, hey, we gotta go. And you also had time constraints then, and we needed to get the beauty shot of Shawn.
I see.
Let's go.
I got you. So let's jump to some fan questions. There's no way we'll get to them all, but we do want to hit a few here. Michael Burgett says, how was the match laid out between Piper and Goldust, and how would it have been if Razor had been in the match, or would there have been a difference? That's a good question. Would the match, obviously we know Razor would have won, but with the exception of the finish, everything else was pretty much what you were going to do, you think?
As far as Piper and Goldust?
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what we wanted to do.
Okay. SV0214 says, I'm watching the Iron Man match right now, and I noticed it's one of, if not the only time that Hebner spoke in a match. Was it his accent and pronouncing it wrestling that kept this from happening more often? Feels like that would have been a sore spot for Vince.
Oh yeah, because we heard from the referee so much.
Well, no, I guess the question is
one-off.
We didn't hear from him again. Oh yeah, but I'm saying again, we didn't often do the championship introductions, as you like to say. We didn't see this type of thing happen again in the future. Did Vince just not like it?
Did you see it before that?
No.
Okay. It was special. It was one night. I don't think that, again, sometimes you're looking at timing constraints and how you can present something, and just a different way to present it. I don't know that it really mattered one way or the other.
Jumpman says, were there any celebrities considered to be a part of the show? Given its closeness or its proximity to Hollywood, it's one of the few early-ish manias without celebrity involvement. And I know you talked.
Well, that Jeff Conway was in it.
But seriously, in years prior, you would try to load it up as many as you could. The year prior at 11, my God, you had 38, different levels, I guess, celebrities, almost none here. What's up with that?
Yeah. I think this was during the time of Vince saying, hey, we're going to focus on our talent. Our talent are going to be the stars of WrestleMania.
You did have Ted Turner there, so that counts for something.
There you go. And Jeff Conway.
Who could forget? You loved him so much, you forgot his name and called him something else.
Kevin.
Yeah. Michael wants to know, was the boyhood dream line planned, or is that Vince just going with the moment?
That's a shoot. I mean, it was a boyhood dream of Shawn Michaels. That's what he always dreamed of his whole life.
I guess the idea is it's become such an iconic call. The boyhood dream has come true, that over the years, you wonder, do different commentators sort of have a closing or a go home or a signature line in mind? Was Vince the type of guy to do that, or just shoot from the hip?
No. Okay. What's in front of him? Feel.
Chris wants to know, how closely were Vince and yourself keeping an eye on Austin around this time? Austin has said that he didn't feel like at this time he was even very visible. It was almost like Vince's attitude was, he didn't want to be the ringmaster. Fuck it. Let him try something else. I don't care.
I think Steve could have gotten that feeling from Vince, and wouldn't surprise me at all that Steve had that feeling about Vince. However, there were plenty of us that saw the potential in Steve Austin and thought, this guy's going to be huge. Just got to have the platform.
By the way, I guess we should plug it. There's a whole special coming up on A&E talking about the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin, his incredible run. I think those start April 18th. Is that right? On A&E?
Something like that.
Yeah. So check your local listings.
Just watch the ones that I'm in.
Well, you're in that one. I saw a preview for it and it's badass. I mean, I'm like ready for it.
I look good.
Well, no, you look like you, but you said a lot of great stuff.
Oh, okay.
We'll do two last ones, then we'll wrap things up. Rajiv wants to know, did you like having the show logo on the mat or a clean mat with nothing on it?
I like a clean mat with nothing on it.
Man, I love the logo there. I
hate it. Cool. It's too noisy. Takes away from the match.
This is the first year I remember you guys cutting up the canvas and selling pieces of it framed with Shawn Michaels. Were you working with a different merchandise company that pitched that, and that's the reason you did the logo mat? Because you would do that for years after.
That was the Barry Dudinsky first thing that we ever did, where it was, from an event.
I got you. It feels like a Home Shopping Network type tie-in.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now the real question everybody wants to know. We got to talk about the entrance. Shawn Michaels has one of the most famous entrances in wrestling history, and we've all seen it. But the real story is Vince did it the day before, I think. And we even hear, and I know we don't talk about current stuff, that last year before WrestleMania, he took Gronk's big bump, and I don't know, in his 70s. Vince is a fucking crazy person. What can you tell us?
That he is.
What can you tell us about him taking the zip line ride here? Whose idea that was? Who tried to talk him out of it? Any of that stuff?
Well, I tried to do it.
You did?
Oh yeah. I was up there with Vince and Shawn when Vince did it. And thank God I didn't do it.
No shit.
The crazy thing about it was they, got Vince all harnessed up. And when Vince went, what no one accounted for was he was damn near in line for the lighting trusses.
Oh,
and man, I'm sitting up there because Vince kicked away, and I'm thinking, motherfuckers, didn't anybody consider this before he got on this and his weight brought everything down and all this shit? Shouldn't a stuntman have done this first to show Vince wants to do it first? Great.
Wait, he did it before a stuntman did it.
There was no stuntman to do it. Vince just wanted to do it. Make sure it was safe. Put it on me. Because the guy assured him, he goes, oh yeah, he goes, we do this, with the guy all the time at whatever games. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do it before Shawn does it. And I wanted to do it. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go second or third. And then I saw him do it, and I was up there on the perch. I was up there where they drop off. And I'm terrified of heights.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why I wanted to do it.
Well, and you could have gotten out of getting married. It's double.
And I'm very happy I got married.
Yeah.
25 blissful years.
Except for the razors.
Except for the razors this morning. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I even got her gift down here as well.
You just grabbed your crotch when you said that. Why'd you do that?
Conrad.
You said, I got her gift right here. I saw you do it.
You didn't see that. It's underneath my desk.
It's not a big PP, but I saw it. I saw your hand wiggle, the whole deal.
Okay.
When you just looked away, by the way.
25 blissful years.
You and I won't make it.
Was there a question? Years. Oh, so no, I did want to do it. And then, but I saw Vince do it. And I was going, saw how fast that when you dropped off that fucker, you were going.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, no, I'm good, man. Go ahead and let Crazy Man do it. And hey, Shawn, that's what you're going to do.
Is it important to Vince to show that I'll never ask you to do something I won't do myself?
He never will.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And he will do it. He'll jump in there and do it. Throw caution to the wind every single time.
Let's talk about, backstage after the big match. We've seen footage that Bret raced backstage, jumped in a car and took off. That was just for the camera shot. He came right back to the building and showered and all that jazz, right? Or was he gone?
No, he left.
So when Shawn comes back through the curtain, is there a big standing ovation and all that jazz that we've seen sometimes behind the scenes, or was that not the case here in 96?
No, not really.
Were WrestleMania after parties a thing here in 96? And if so, what do you remember? Because this would have gone off the air early by California time. So you could have still had some nightlife.
Yeah. I don't even remember. Nothing that stands out.
Well, you were probably busy worried about getting married, but I just didn't know if you remembered anything.
Not really.
Else.
It was pretty easy. I do, she do, we do. Let's go party.
Okay. So no follow-up from WrestleMania 12 as far as after that night or anything?
No, not really. If you go back and you look at the video, and it's out there somewhere, like one of the first people that confronts Bret when he came back. And I think I said, good match, brother. Vince busted my balls about that for years. Good match, brother. What the fuck? But the idea was we had a camera, follow him all the way out. Bret stayed at a different hotel. Bret was gone. He left. That was Bret's idea.
You've told us before, like, after WrestleMania 6, there was a limo ride and everybody's just kind of quiet because it was such a big moment. How did Vince feel about WrestleMania 12? The business was down, but it felt like, man, we're picking up some steam. And there
was no limo in WrestleMania 6. That was in Skydome, right?
Yeah.
That was an elevator ride.
Okay.
No limo.
All right. Well,
fuck. Meltzer
Jesus
wrote
Christ.
that.
Give me some fucking context here. Tell me if Vince was happy with the goddamn show, and then we'll get out of here.
I think Vince was ecstatic with the show.
Okay.
I think he was very happy with it and thought that, we crowned a new guy and was happy with the direction.
Was Shawn relieved it finally happened? Because it feels like he had to be in a bit of a pressure cooker, given all the context of all that he had been through in his real life, all the stuff with the Marines, and he had been all over the place emotionally. I mean, he quit the promotion and got talked back into coming in, and there's been a mess for Shawn at times. And now he's been validated. He wanted to be the best in the world, and he was. Or did it feel like, okay, now the work begins? Not like this is a destination, but now I know the work starts now.
It was a combination of having the entire weight of the world taken off your shoulders. And then when you came around the corner, here's the rest of the universe.
I love that. That's exactly what I was hoping you would say. Well, up next is WrestleMania 22. Before we run down the card, anything else you want to mention to us about WrestleMania 12? I know you said it was a thumbs up. You're getting married. We've beat it up pretty long for him for a couple hours here. Anything else you want to mention about WrestleMania 12?
I thought it was great. Again, when you go back and you look at it for the time, it delivered a great show and was, I thought it was good. I thought it was damn good for the time.
In hindsight, do you wish you would have found a spot for Razor on there somewhere?
Would love to have. Wasn't my call.
WrestleMania 22 is our call. That'll be our show next week. I can't believe this is a real thing. But we're right upon the 15-year anniversary of that, and it doesn't feel it. On top, it's John Cena and Triple H. We've also got Tori Wilson working with Candice Michelle in a Playboy pillow fight. Couldn't do that these days. We've got Ray, Randy, and Kurt in a 3-way for the World Heavyweight Championship. How about this for an attraction? Shawn Michaels versus Mr. McMahon. We've also got a casket match with Mark Henry and The Undertaker. Lots of rumor and innuendo that the streak almost ended right there. We'll also talk about Trish Stratus and Mickie James. We've got the Boogeyman in a handicap match against Booker T and Sharmell. An incredible hardcore match with Edge taking on Mick Foley. JBL will be challenging Shawn Michaels for, I'm all over the place. Chris Benoit for the United States Championship. There's the Money in the Bank ladder match that Ric Flair's in. Yeah. Ric Flair, Matt Hardy, Finlay, Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and Rob Van Dam. And then a tag team match for the straps. Carlito and Chris Masters taking on Big Show and Kane. Does this feel like it was 15 freaking years ago, dude?
Feels like it was 100 years ago.
Does it really?
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, man, it feels like it's like 7-8 years ago, but I guess not. It's 15 years. It's WrestleMania 22. What sticks out in your mind? What do you think we'll talk about when we talk about the Allstate Arena from 15 years ago?
God, and it's funny. The only thing that sticks out in my mind off the bat is Fit Finlay and Ric Flair there to basically hold the ladder for everybody else. Because neither one of them are going to get past the third rung, and that was a joke going into it, and it was hilarious.
Well, happy anniversary to you and the missus. I hope you guys have a great time, whatever you're going to do. You going to take her to a fancy steak dinner, or what's y'all's plans tomorrow?
Yeah, I have no idea.
All right. We got to work on that. Can I help? I'll tag in Megan. She'll come up with some fun ideas.
Yeah, I'm going to sleep all day, and then we'll go, maybe get some street tacos and call it a night.
All right. Well, that sounds fancy. That's relationship goals. And we'll be back next week right here talking about WrestleMania 22 on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard.
Rock on.
I'm not sure if you're going to do it. Thanks for kicking it in there.
Oh, yeah? Do I know Pashavia? We had lunch one time.
Hopefully not street tacos. We'll find out next week. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.